To discuss this further, I'm joined in the studio with Douglas Herbert, our international affairs commentator. Now, Douglas, we've heard the backlash here is growing. Democrats in Congress now are vowing to oppose a government funding bill that would include money for ICE. If that's the case, what are the potential repercussions here?
The potential repercussions are another partial government shutdown. I say partial, not the entire government would shut down, but maybe 2/3 of it. And that is right after a January 30th, that is next week, deadline, after which the current funding lapses and new funding must be approved to keep the government open. Look, what's going on here is this bill was set to be, it's called an appropriations package, and it had been divided into 6 separate bills in the lower house of the U.S. Congress, the House of Representatives. Now it goes to the Senate. The senators are poised to vote on it. Now, last week, this is what's changed because of this shooting. Last week, the senators, by a narrow minority, actually approved bringing this bill up to the Senate for final passage, this funding bill. They basically argued that there was nothing really concrete or substantial that they could do. They didn't believe that this bill, one way or the other, was going to constrain federal agents or constrain ICE, that wasn't really the way to go about doing it. And in fact, the Senate Democrats at the time had signaled that they believed that this bill, as passed in the House, the lower chamber of the U.S. Congress, was likely to pass in the Senate. Remember, part of this 6-bill appropriations package, giving the government money, included money for DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees both Border Patrol and so-called ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. ICE being at the heart of all our reports, all the headlines right now, really under scrutiny and under fire here. This shooting has really changed the calculus right now. And even Democrats who might have been inclined to vote before are saying no. The Democratic leader in the Democratic minority in the Senate, his name's Chuck Schumer. He's from New York, Democrat, as I said. He basically said that what's happening in Minnesota is, quote, appalling and unacceptable in any American city. And he basically, he blasted both the Senate and the House Republicans for failing to include language in this bill, in this funding bill, that would have put more constraints on ICE, because more and more, the Democrats especially, are calling out Trump and his administration for basically giving ICE, as they see it, unbounded powers. They have become, as they see it, a law unto themselves. They answer to no authority but Trump's, as they see it, weaponized Department of Homeland Security, weaponized in the sense that all of the people in there, no adults in the room, they are all there to do Trump's bidding. They do what Donald Trump says. No pushback. They say as long as those constraints aren't in the bill, they are going to vote no. So there's a growing number of Democrats. You need 60 votes for this bill to actually pass. And right now, in order, even the Republicans in their majority, they're not going to muster enough Democrats, even just a handful probably, to be able to get that bill over the hump.
Now, Doug, to go back to the shooting for a moment, the administration has said that Alex Pretti was trying to attack the agents, sort of the same justification they came out with after Renee Good was shot. Is there any indication now that we have this eyewitness video that the administration is admitting any faults? Can you take us through some of the salient points?
No, there's no indication that Trump and his immediate officials in Department of Homeland Security and Border Patrol and ICE are in any way ready to be receptive to these demands to withdraw the ICE agents from Minneapolis. They are hunkering down, doubling down, if you will, on their narrative that Pretti was a domestic terrorist, if you will, a rioter who posed an imminent danger to the ICE agents, basically turning the tables and saying that the ICE agents are the victims. They're the ones being attacked, and civilians or protesters are the ones who pose the real danger, who are the real threat. So that's the narrative, as a lot of people in Minneapolis see it flipped on its head right now. What we have is the New York Times video analysis, which was the first really thorough analysis, frame by frame, to come out, basically saying what the video appears to suggest. One, it appears to totally contradict the ICE account of what happened. It shows a group of protesters speaking to a federal agent. You see Pretti standing in the middle of the street, basically his phone in one hand, his arm up in another hand, empty, and he seems to be directing traffic. and then an agent approaches him, but there's no indication from the video that the agents would have known that he had a gun. Remember, you're allowed to carry a gun with a permit, as he had in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. It's only after he was pinned to the ground, from what you see in the video, that the agents seemed to discover that he had a gun. So that contradicts the account by which a dangerous armed man approached us with the intent to, quote, massacre ICE agents, because they apparently, seemingly, didn't even know. Then they pulled the gun from him, they unholstered, and then they began shooting. 10 shots were fired within 5 seconds. You hear that in the video, you see it in the video, and also eyewitnesses hear it. There are more and more eyewitnesses, including a doctor, who are filing their testimony from the scene of what happened with the court, with the American Civil Liberties Union, so they have on record the clear eyewitness account of what they saw with their own eyes. So believing eyewitness testimony and facts on the ground, as opposed to what many see as a spun and fabricated narrative, almost pre-scripted, given and put forth by ICE.
And just quickly, Dad, obviously there's an investigation, FBI has said, so I guess we'll have to see what more information comes out from that.
Well, you said there is an investigation. Let me just put flesh on that. Yeah, the investigation is being right now led by the Department of Homeland Security and the ICE. If you're to believe the accusations, it's like having the perpetrator basically investigate his or her crime. You can see why that is causing a little bit of controversy among a lot of legal experts, a lot of officials locally on the ground, local and state in Minnesota themselves. The Minnesota local agents, had wanted to go to the scene to investigate yesterday. They were reportedly blocked by the federal authorities, the federal agents, from being able to approach the scene, to be able to launch an investigation. And what their fears are right now is not only were they prevented from starting to do an independent investigation as they see it, but they now also believe it may be compromised. The crime scene itself may be compromised because they fear the federal agents may have tampered with it, removed evidence.
Thank you, Doug. That's Douglas Herbert from our International Affairs commentator.